Welcome to Work in Progress, Conversations with Creators. I'm your host, Logan Royce Beitman. On today's program today, I'm very excited to have with me the legendary street artist Shepard Fairey. You may know him from his Obama Hope poster or from a million other things he's done. He's coming to New Mexico to do a few murals and have an art show, and we spoke about that and much more. I hope that you enjoy.
If you enjoy our podcast, please like and subscribe and consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Albuquerque Journal to help us bring you more content like this. You can find this episode and all of our podcasts on the Albuquerque Journal website, abqjournal.com, as well as YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. See the show notes for a discount code on a digital subscription. Thank you for supporting the Albuquerque Journal, New Mexico's leading news.
Hi, Shepard. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I'm excited. So you're coming to Santa Fe. You have an exhibition at Turner Carroll Gallery, and you're also doing a couple murals.
Well, in Santa Fe, I'm doing a piece on a portion of the I believe it's the Art Institute there.
Yes,
and it's going to be great to have a space that's connected with art in the first place. But it's no, it's a modest mural. It's not a huge mural, but it's it's of course celebrating things that I care about, peace and harmony. I'll just wait till it's finished for everyone to see it. You'll understand. It's in my my usual style, but I think it also is going to work really nicely with the architecture. Whenever I work on a mural, I'm thinking about context, of course. And then in Albuquerque, I'm doing a larger mural at the Murals rail yards. And that's a really cool opportunity because a ton of people go through that space. It's a community gathering space. It's got a really great history that involves a lot of different cultures mingling. And I don't know whether you've seen a rendering of the mural yet, but it's an opportunity to look at some of the aspects of the rail yard itself, some of the beautiful landscape features of Albuquerque and New Mexico, and then look at some of the things, symbols from Native heritage and the state bird, the roadrunner, which I think is such a cool looking bird. So it's a blend of things that hopefully will create conversations, and anybody can find something interesting to connect to.
How much research do you normally do when you're doing a kind of mural like this?
Well, it depends. I really believe in respecting the communities where I'm working, and especially when it's a place that I'm not intimately familiar with. Yeah, I have a few friends in Albuquerque, and I've been through Albuquerque, but I am by no means an expert. So I'm relying on a lot of the people who live there, who understand the history, who have, their diverse perspectives. And then I'm hearing what they have to say. I'm looking at materials they're pointing me to, videos, articles, photography, because I look at one of the problems that humanity has as we don't see how much we have in common, and then simultaneously respect our our differences, our individual cultures, and our idiosyncrasies. And I think those two things are not contradictory. They're actually part of an important dichotomy. So if I want the world to look like what I'd like it to look like, where there's room for all these different voices, but we can find common themes, then I need to, I need to be very respectful in backing that up with research.
You're not just it's not art for art's sake. You want it to be out in the public. You want people to respond, and people do respond. And you're very popular among many people. But I guess I'm wondering, kind of, how do I say it? A lot of times, people making political art, it's kind of like I'm making this statement, and it might turn off a lot of people, right? They might sort of automatically ignore it. But I do think that you have a way with a lot of your work that you do bring people in who maybe might have some different ideas than you, but they can still find a way into the work. And how do you how do you manage to do that? Or are these kind of things you think about, kind of the idea of like you want to kind of uh be political in a particular way, but you also want to like not alienate people?
I mean, your take on it is perfect and exactly what I'm aiming for. The idea when I was younger of recognizing injustice and flaws and pointing the finger at the villains, there's still an element of that in some of my work. But what I've realized, I think, is a better approach, especially in our modern time of extreme polarization and division, which I think ignores how much we have in common, how much we all have shared values around um, wanting a balance of freedom and then a sense of obligation to our own families and our own communities. If you extrapolate from there, then since everyone's got a family and a community, we should respect everyone. But sometimes the visual language, the conceptual elements, the symbols that I use to try to bring people into that concept, that those themes, it's very important that it doesn't just trigger people to look away. And some people that are younger that are they like the idea of always being right. They might think that it's too soft an approach, but I've been doing this for a long time and I've tried every approach, and this is what makes sense to me in terms of helping people to be a little bit more open-minded and have more humanity in their hearts about how they see others, and giving them space to digest and hopefully you know evolve. Somebody's gonna hear me say that and say I'm perfect the way I am, like don't tell me what to do, and that's fine. But at least I'm inviting that, or attempting to.
Do you feel like are there times you can point to and you can say, this is a piece of art I made, whether it's a poster or a mural or a painting or any, that, and that it had some, like, you could see an effect that it had. You could see that it actually did change people's minds, or kind of had an influence, that is sort of visible or measurable.
Well, I think there are plenty of examples that I know of where many people have said this this affected me emotionally. This moved my opinion about something. Um, and I think it's such a complex sea of variables that sort of change culture that I never would take credit for being somebody that's dramatically shifted culture in a moment. But there have been some times when things I've done have gone viral where I realize this is part of a change. This is part of a movement. And
Yeah.
whether it's the Hope poster for Barack Obama, which I think was inspiring visually to a lot of people, that made them look into what he was about, and then who he was as a person and a communicator did the rest. Um, or my We the People series that I did for the first Women's March,
Yeah.
um, that was trying to portray all Americans, no matter what their skin color, religion, heritage was or is, as equally American, equally human, present them with dignity. I know that that moved a lot of people. And
Yeah. Yeah.
there are other things that I've done around gun violence that I know have been moving to people. There are things I've done around the environment that I know have been moving to people. But I look at all of it as, hey, there's a lot of noise out there. I don't have enough of an ego to say I'm going to be the one that by myself catalyzes change. But as long as I'm doing something that I know is pushing in the direction, you just never know. The joke I make is, when I was a little and I couldn't get the top off a jar and I'd ask my dad to do it, and then he could do it, he'd say, well, I was able to do it because you loosened it just to the point of it
Right.
giving. And so, like, who knows when that tipping point is gonna be, but I think we all need to feel like we can play a role in it.
Yeah, and I think that's probably also good because I think that sometimes people, especially like in activist circles, can get a little burnt out, or you feel like, oh, we do all this work and then nothing changes, or but again, it's like maybe you're loosening that lid, and it may feel like it's not opening, but then it does, right? And so
Yeah,
yeah.
it's you're part of a chain of events, and um, one thing that I've learned from many, many years of activism with progress and setbacks, is that you need to find some joy in the process, and remain vigilant. And so all the people that I am most inspired by are people that, whether it was the relationships that they built, sort of like, welcome to the party of people that want to do good in the world, and you know, we we raise our fists, but we also enjoy each other's company and listen to music and have a glass of wine. All of it is about human connection, human bonding, and even art. To me, why would I share my art if I didn't feel like it can become a reference point that creates conversations that make people feel a little bit less lonely, that will move people. So,
Yeah.
how you then extend that into your daily life as a creative activist is really important.
Yeah, and then I guess kind of thinking about previous generations of artists who may have inspired you. I mean, I feel like your visual language and a lot of your work is drawing to some extent from like Russian constructivism, probably like Radchenko or Stepanova or people that are part of that. But I think in addition to kind of the visual reference, some of the things you're saying now about kind of how you want your art to be out there in the public and part of, I mean, that was also, I think, important to them as well. They wanted to take art out of the museums and I mean, not that it's not also in the museums, it can be in both, but to make it part of everyday life, and they were working with factories and whatever, right? And I'm wondering if
Yeah,
that's something
yeah,
if that you
absolutely.
that you think about kind of as a I mean, that's a long time, that's 100 years ago or more, but
Well, one of the things that I think that's fascinating about the Russian constructivists is, um, Rodchenko is probably one of my biggest visual art heroes, but he also was a naive idealist in a sense. Like, his vision of what the Soviet Union was going to deliver was very utopian, and he thought that he was working in service of that. And how Lenin and then Stalin ran things was not aligned with that utopian vision. That
right.
But yeah, that whole idea of art for the public good and everyone needs to get involved. That was very much part of what they were putting across. Now, my visual inspiration largely comes from that movement, but my other sources of inspiration are very diverse. The graphics for punk rock, skateboard graphics,
Yeah,
album covers, pop art, political art like Barbara Kruger,
right.
street art and graffiti. But I'd say that a general theme within all of it is that almost all of those movements were about public address beyond elite spaces.
Yeah. And let me ask a little bit more about punk because you did bring it up and you're wearing that Bad Brains shirt and everything. And to, kind of how that has what influence that has had on you. Because, like I also like a couple years ago I got to interview Raymond Pettibon, and when I asked him about punk.
I'm looking at a cluster of pettibones right now in my
Or
arm.
yeah, 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 yeah. No, I love his work, and it was great to speak to him. But he was almost kind of annoyed, like that I brought up punk. 'Cause he's like, that was a long time ago, and I think it wasn't. It was like I was doing these posters, and he was kind of I mean, he's like, yeah, it's lasted. The influence of punk has lasted a lot longer than most movements, and he recognizes that. And I think he's appreciative that people like his work, and that But but I mean, yeah, I guess I wonder, kind of like, yeah, how much was that kind of punk ethos or identity important to you in the early years, and then how much do you feel like that's still part of who you are and what you're doing?
Um, in the early years, it was so important that I absolutely wouldn't be the person that I am now without it. It just wouldn't have happened in the same way. I might still be doing some creative stuff, but the whole merging of um, do-it-yourself culture, the rebellion, the socially outspoken lyrics, it, that that had such a profound influence on my art. It just never would have been the same without that. So, punk as an idea that it's about freedom, it's about doing something with passion, whether you're a virtuoso or not. That it's about finding a community of people who can build an ecosystem together, independent of what the dominant mainstream system is willing to support. Um, all of that is incredibly important to me still. That being said, I also appreciate the punk strategy that, say, the Sex Pistols or the Clash had, of signing to major labels, and especially the Clash considering it a strategy of détournement, using the machinery against itself in a way, spreading their more radical message through a mainstream channel. I I embrace that. I also don't consider things always binary. There's some people in government, in pretty corporate structures, that are actually very ethical people who want to do good things, and their opportunity to do that from the inside and work with somebody who's an artist with conviction like me or somebody else, that's a great opportunity. So I use what I call the inside outside strategy, but even thinking in that way never would have happened without punk.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, it's interesting you bring that up, because I think it's like, yeah, if I think about, I mean, you certainly, I mean, Keith Haring or Banksy, or a lot of, um, there's a kind of like, maybe you start out, you're young, you're poor, you're doing stuff that's technically illegal, street art maybe. At some point, then it does shift, and you're getting invited to do murals and commissioned works, and or you're you know putting out t-shirts and kind of merch that people can buy and things, and and that, I mean, certainly, like Keith Haring with his pop shop, right? That, I mean, like, do you ever feel like, is there ever a tension between those two things, where you feel you have the kind of like that pure, almost rebellious impulse, and then, like, I understand what you're saying, like, that there's some value in not always being an outsider as well, but is there ever a tension between the insider and outsider?
Yeah, there absolutely is. And I try to make everything make sense for its place and never think one dimensionally. Here's a great example of how I might reconcile those two worlds. For example, there's an activist organization called Fall of Freedom that was founded by uh, Dred Scott, who was the
Yeah,
artist that did burned the flag on the Capitol steps and got arrested in '89,
yeah,
and then also Robert Longo, who uh, amazing artist who's one of my favorites. But they started
yeah,
this thing. They asked me to do something, and I did an image of the Statue of Liberty with their hands up in handcuffs, and it says "It can't happen here." Um, a reference to the Sinclair novel about a fascist leader taking over the United States.
right.
Um, that's done as a purely independent project. Those prints were, I sold some and then printed thousands to be given away free. Then later, I was asked by Time to do the 250th cover, and I did a different rendition of the Statue of Liberty as a multi-ethnic modern woman, um, representing the melting pot. But it's a much less controversial, much more, literally inclusive approach. But these, both of these messages to me are very important and not mutually exclusive. At Time is a massive corporation. The image is going to be on 2 million printed covers as well as all over the place online. It's a great opportunity, but if I want to say what I want to say about encroaching fascism, I need to do that project as a DIY project with other like-minded friends.
Yeah. And,
And
what do
so
you
yes,
go ahead, sorry.
there's a tension, but I think that creative problem solving and strategic application can at least make what I would consider the muddier areas easier to navigate.
Yeah, yeah, well, and you've been doing this for a while, so is this something that you've kind of been able to evolve your strategy as you've gone on as an artist?
Definitely. I never thought a lot of the doors would open that have, and so I'm presented with things I didn't expect. And then I thought, well, what's the way that I can do this with integrity, even if it's not the most you know critical or outspoken version of what I do, but that I can have these different zones, different lanes where I can, you know, my philosophy can be delivered, but different shades of it in different places.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, let's just switch gears a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about your exhibition you're gonna have at Turner Carroll?
Sure. Um, yeah, the exhibition is called Cultivate Justice, and it's largely featuring images of women, which didn't really start off as what I was intending to do. But when I was showing Turner Carroll some of the work, they pointed out the fact that, oh, there's a lot of women as archetypes, as symbols. Um, and then they started asking me questions about that. And I realized that, yeah, I've been doing a lot of things that are celebrating women as community builders, um, as peace builders, um, and that's just sort of organically been part of my work. I'm married to a woman. I work with a lot of women in my studio. I have two daughters, so I think over the years, my idea of what's healthier for society, um, you know, patriarchal dominance or having more influence from women. And obviously, I'm generalizing because there's no group, no group is monolithic, and that includes the genders.
Right.
Um, but yeah, that's sort of a lot of the content of the show. And interestingly, I met the folks from Turner Carroll, at Nadia from Pussy Riot's wedding.
Yeah. Oh,
And
okay.
so, and then they also show Swoon, and so
Right.
Nadia, of course, badass feminist, Swoon, badass feminist. So they have a lot of female empowerment in their program, and
Yeah.
so it was kind of a nice thing. But the show in general is about justice, which encompasses a lot of things, but women as part of the group that I think is cultivating justice is prominent.
And, I mean, a lot of people are saying, like, women are kinda under threat now with, maybe the current administration.
Well, yeah, when you look at the intentional passing over of women who are, even by all internal communications, qualified for the advancement in the military that they would get. Pete Hegseth is blocking it along with people of color. He's saying that there was a woke culture. So, the attacks on women and every other marginalized group that are going on right now, from you know, a top-down structural standpoint within this administration are absolutely disgusting to me. Um, but I've focused on these issues for a while. I was focusing on these issues under Biden as well.
Sure.
It's an ongoing problem. It just is worse right now. And I think that it breaks my heart because we can do better. We all, every single person was, uh, birthed by a woman and taken care of most likely by a woman. And being a father and having a partner who I saw be an incredible mother, and I had to thank my own mom and apologize. And it's really hard for me to witness this stuff, as
Yeah.
somebody that knows what kind of contribution women make to all of our lives in our world.
Do you have hope for the future?
Yeah, I always have hope, because if you're hopeless, you're not going to act. And so I'm disillusioned, but I'm always hopeful. I look at examples historically of really bad behaviors in places, Nazi Germany, for example. And I look at where Germany is now with funding education, even to foreigners that move there. Um, a huge percentage of their energy comes from renewables. They have their problems, right wing groups flaring up, nationalism here and there, anti-immigrant sentiments. But for Germany to recover from Hitler and the Third Reich and be where it is now, where they actually have plaques outside of places where Jewish people were pulled out of homes and sent to concentration camps. They've acknowledged their mistakes, and it doesn't mean they're not remaking some of them, but they they have been resilient. I believe we can be resilient.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, like, yeah, look, you can look at kind of some of the worst atrocities in history, and then, yeah, like, I mean, if society can change in a bad way, it can change in a good way too, and I think sometimes
Exactly.
we forget that. Things can also get better. Let me ask you just kind of more kind of about the art itself visually and in terms of your process. I mean, because I mean, you are known for, like, the Obey, um image and the hope with Obama, which are some of your simpler pieces, really. But you have a lot, especially the murals and some of the work that's very complex, a lot of layering, a lot of patterns. And I'm wondering if you want to just talk a little bit about um, kind of how you think of, especially like a more complex piece, like maybe the mural in Albuquerque or similar works. I lived in Miami for a while, and you had some big pieces there in Wynwood, and so when you're thinking of maybe a bigger, more complex piece, kind of how do you kind of work through the composition of it and the layering and all of that?
My process is to look at the pieces with a visual rhythm to them, where there's a logic to a primary image that's graphic, that's compelling, and then patterns, smaller images, symbols, text, all so that you can digest it in a logical way, that it's not just a wall of noise with everything at the same volume, the same frequency. um, I enjoy the more complex pieces because I think it gives people something a little bit richer to chew on, and I treat them like a mosaic where I'm tinkering with, experimenting with all the different ingredients and finding what works where, at what scale, what color combinations. I'm I am relentless. I I mess around with this stuff until it feels right. And I'm very honest with myself. One of the things that I think makes me a decent artist is not um, an incredible technical ability or a natural intuitive thing, but that I am a good editor, curator. I experiment. I don't settle for something that's not yielding what I want. And so yeah, I can't. Some of them come together more quickly. Others are very time consuming, but I just don't stop until I'm happy.
And this is all like digitally? You're working in like Photoshop or InDesign or something to do
It's
these
it
kind of collages or
it goes back and forth between analog and digital. I make all my illustrations analog, and then I scan them, and then I have this ability to, in Illustrator primarily, look at how things work color wise, compositionally. And over the 35 years that I've been working and the 25 plus years that I've been working with some digital tools, I have an incredible archive of patterns I've designed, spray paint textures I've scanned. And with every new thing where I make a new illustration, um, I have the ability to then have a border or a motif or something from my existing lexicon that I may want to mix it with, but I'm constantly illustrating new work. Like the Borealis mural is
yeah.
almost exclusively brand new work because it all has to do with Albuquerque and New Mexico, and so there's really nothing in there that I had as a pre-existing ingredient. But I use the process that I've been mentioning and
And maybe some oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
yeah, made the illustrations, scanned them, had the dimensions of the mural wall, and then tried a lot of different combinations, and then narrowed it down to a few compositions that I thought were successful, and then reviewed those with some of the team there in Albuquerque and got their feedback, and yeah, and then settled on the final pretty painlessly.
Yeah. So what are some of the images that are gonna be in that? Beside well, you mentioned there's a Roadrunner, but then
Yeah,
some
so
of the
the most dominant image is a railway worker who is sort of a blend of Latino and Native American features with his overalls and his cap, meant to look like someone from the 30s, 40s, sort of the heyday. But a lot of the feedback that I got was, okay, a lot of the people that worked here who were, um, you know, doing very hard physical labor were people from groups that have been typically marginalized and don't always reap the benefits of the work that they do in the way that industrialists do, or the town in a broader sense does. And I really appreciate that perspective, and I wanted to do an illustration of a worker with dignity so that there's appreciation for the worker, and not just Latino and Native American workers, even though I think that that makeup of the workforce is really important, but the worker in general.
yeah. When you're talking about that, I mean, do you also feel, like, very connected to the Mexican muralist tradition?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Orozco, Rivera. I mean, she's not a Mexican muralist, but I love Frida Kahlo's work. A lot of that work is, to me, in the spirit of social commentary and connecting with the public in the same way that my work is. So
Yeah.
you really can't help but being part of it. And of course, Diego Rivera did a lot celebrating the the worker. And that's not exclusively what this mural is about, but it's a key element. And um, you know, there's an image of a train from that era. There's the Three Sisters, the mountains. There's some native patterns that are generally accepted as bridging between many of the tribes, because that's where it gets tricky, is if you do something that's a motif that's specific to one tribe but excluding the others, there can be some
Right.
politics there. But um, the native heritage in New Mexico is really important. So yeah, all of that is woven in there.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because I'm also not from New Mexico originally. I moved here a couple years ago, and it's I think coming from the East Coast, I feel like growing up in the East Coast, when we thought about history, it was a lot about the history of slavery, and blacks and whites. And here it's just a kind of different, they're thinking about the Spanish and Mexicans and westward expansion, and that's really the kind of so it's sort of a different set of references that are kind of the at the tip of people's tongues or on the top of their minds, and like you're saying, all the different indigenous groups and how and I think that it sounds like also kind of not living here, and you were able to speak with people and get some insight and figure out how can I do something that's going to reflect the people here and that people are going to respond well to. And I think it is it's a little complex, but it sounds like you've been able to well, we'll see what people say, but it sounds like you're like it's going to be really good.
Yeah, well, I'm approaching these things with respect and
Yeah.
with the full understanding that I have white straight male privilege, but I am someone that really cares about justice and want to be an ally to anybody that's not getting the justice they deserve. I think that spirit will come through in the mural.
Yeah.
There will always be people saying, another, white guy took the spotlight, or the guy's got a white savior complex. I think anybody that dealt with me on a regular basis would not feel that way, but I'm accepting that I can't please everyone, and I just keep trying to push forward in the ways that I think are constructive. I love the Black Flag song "Rise Above." I try to rise above.
Your work is all over, right? Is there anywhere that you've made a mural, or that maybe you never expected that your work would be in a particular location, and that you were kind of surprised to be invited or to end up somewhere?
There've been so many of those, but I think a couple of them in Paris that have been really mind blowing. I was invited in 2015 to do the first three-dimensional installation at the Eiffel Tower,
Oh, yeah.
um, for COP21, the climate change summit. And it didn't get as much attention as it might have because the same week the terror attack at the Bataclan happened.
Right,
And
right.
but when you consider that it's a amazing French monument, it's a global monument, but that they invited an American artist to be the first one to do an installation there is pretty astounding and open-minded. I think that an interesting thing I've learned about the French, despite all the cliches of them being um, very, very prejudiced towards their own language and their own culture, is that they're very open-minded to people who have a similar philosophy, a similar belief in creative culture, and are principled. And they saw that climate change and environmental destruction had been themes within my work for a long time. And so I was considered somebody who was a great candidate for that project. Later on, largely because of that project and a few others, the mayor of Paris, for the 10-year anniversary of that project, had me do an installation on the outside of City Hall, which is an extraordinary building. It's an amazing location in the middle of Paris. And I was able to do this large installation was also about climate change there. So when I think about whether a French artist would ever be allowed to do installations on similar American monuments, I know that our xenophobia here would prevent that most likely, despite the fact that the Statue of Liberty was a gift from the
Right,
French and that it was actually created by Gustave Eiffel.
right, right.
So, um, I think that we have unfortunately a bit more of a provincial attitude here, and I consider myself a proud American, not always proud of what the country is doing, but I'm proud of its potential. I'm
Right.
proud of many of its accomplishments, but I also
Yeah.
consider myself a global citizen. And I go to other places wanting to learn and acknowledging how little I know, and being grateful for having tour guides and getting to soak up things that expand my perspective on the world, and also often make me realize people are the same everywhere. They're great people, and there's uncool people everywhere. Nobody has the monopoly on lovely people or the jerks.
Right. That's true. That's true. And I think I'll just do like one more question because I feel like when you started out, you know, um, there was a lot of prejudice against street art. I watched this documentary Wild Style, kind of looking at those artists and how much hatred there was for graffiti, and I just feel like within your own lifetime, there's been such a sea change where, especially like for instance here in Albuquerque, we really pride ourselves in being a city of street art. We have a lot of murals everywhere, and a lot of it's not just us, but in all around the world now. I feel like the kind of work that you're doing is really valued and people want it. And has that been surprising to you, or what's that kind of thinking about kind of when you started out and how things are now and how public attitudes have changed toward this kind of art?
It has been surprising, and sometimes amusing, sometimes infuriating, and sometimes inspiring. I When I started off, um, of course, street art was reviled, and I got arrested. I've been arrested 18 times,
Yeah.
but my identity was revealed in 1990 because I changed the candidate for mayor's billboard around with a street art prank, and I ended up getting busted for that. And I realized that my anonymity being taken away was also an opportunity, because so much of the hate and discourse around graffiti and street art was just from the detractors, the people who I knew who were really awesome creative people just looking for an outlet and wanted to do it in public space. Their impulses were not about vandalism or destruction. It was hopeful and creative. And so I could all of a sudden, once I was outed, I could speak on behalf of the movement, at least for my own work, and to a degree, maybe a few other people. I would never claim to speak for everyone, but to see that even, early on in my career, I was making poster series where I would put my work up on the street, photograph it, and then call the series Urban Renewal as a joke. It was ironic
Right.
because
Right.
I knew that it was going to be called vandalism. Then, after another 15 years, it actually started to turn around where I would be invited to do things. And that's why I started painting murals, because I was invited and I could spend the time to paint rather than just pasting things up, even complex things, quickly before the police showed up. And so then there was about a 5-minute window where I was no longer seen as the biggest villain, but then it flipped over to, now I'm complicit with gentrification, and I'm part of
Right.
the tool of gentrification. I'm a pawn of the evil industrialist landlords, developers out there. And of course, I'm doing the same thing the whole time. It's just people's perspectives on it changed, and outsiders love to remain contrarian. When everyone else is saying it's a terrible thing to do, they're saying it's a great thing to do. And when the squares are saying it's a great thing to do, they're saying it's a terrible thing to do. I
Right.
find I find that side of the outsider community, to be almost as irritating as the sort of conformist lemmings and authoritarians that are the other side. Um, you really have to just dissect things in a sophisticated way and look at the pros and cons in every
Yeah.
zone, and and not just be lazy about your interpretation of things. So yeah, it's been fascinating.
Well, actually, I'm and sorry, you probably have to go, but just because you brought it up, have you felt like there's been pushback? Because I think sometimes it's just like you get to a certain level of fame, you become a target. Like people love to like build you up, and then like if you're people know your name now, and now they can start attacking you because now you're the establishment or something, right? Like it's sort of, I think that happens everywhere, but especially in the art world, and maybe especially if you're part of this kind of art world where you had a kind of outsider identity, then there are people who maybe react to that.
Yeah, the cultures I came up through, admittedly, I was one of those types of people when I was young, like, oh, that band sold more than 5 records, sell
Yeah.
out. Um,
Right.
but then it it really switched for me when Nirvana broke. It
Mm.
was unexpected. I was a fan of a lot of the music that sort of was the same music they were inspired by. The Melvins, Sonic
Yeah.
Youth,
Yeah.
Husker Du, the Pixies, and then to see the swirl of opinions around Nirvana's success and how many people who had loved their first album, then when the second album broke through, they wanted to abandon them. That was about them and their chosen identity as outsiders. I said, awesome. Nirvana kicked Poison
Yeah.
off the radio. This is amazing. This is better
Right.
for all of us. This is a breakthrough of stuff that's good. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so, yeah, sure, it hurts my feelings a little bit when people attack me because I've had success, but the ways in which um, I think, navigated my career and the things I've chosen to do. If anyone understands where the principles I was coming from and they look at it closely, I think they would see that I've been consistent with my principles.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I may no longer be that cool underground secret. Like, hey, have you heard about this guy's stuff? Well, I have, so I'm better than you are. But hey,
Right.
cause I'm a nice person, I'll let you into our little clique. Um, that mentality I understand, but I don't endorse it because people should find other things to feel good about themselves other than just pure exclusivity, because the same thing that makes a billionaire say, I got this unique art piece for millions of dollars. Aren't I awesome because I got this trophy? That's the mentality that's like, oh, I got the secret new band and maybe I'll share it with you. And when the secret gets out into too broad a circle, I then shit on them and move on to the next thing.
Yeah, I feel like that's an important point because if the work is good, and I think anyone who does look at your work will see that it's consistent. Your values are consistent, and it's like whether you're famous or you were unknown, or whether whoever you're being invited to do something, whatever context it is, the work is consistent. And so I think that, and like you're saying, yeah, it's like if you want to reach people, then we shouldn't be upset that you're reaching people, you know?
Well, I mean, I appreciate the validation. I'm not lobbying for that from you, but but yeah,
No, but I think
point
it's
is just
true.
that I understand all these things that come with what I do, and there's when I take a deep breath, I feel nothing but gratitude for all the opportunities I've had and the audience that I now have built, and um, that comes with a lot of different opinions. And, sometimes when I look at social media and I look at commentary, it just makes me feel sad about our species, but I always feel hopeful too. So
Yeah,
I just, keep going.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much. It's been an honor to speak with you. I've really enjoyed this. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Logan. Been great for me too. Hopefully I'll see you in Albuquerque or Santa Fe.